A lot of us quit while we're still on the right path, simply because we misunderstand the shape of the path we're on. Let me explain. Last week I was in a cafe doing some research when I came across an article called The Two Types of Growth Curves by James Clear, the very guy who wrote Atomic Habits, which is a phenomenal book. And he breaks growth down into two curves we've already learned, and probably forgotten as well, in high school math. Remember logarithmic curves and exponential curves? Yeah, those two. And that 2 minute read, which I'll actually link in the description below for you guys to check out if you want, highly recommend it. That 2 minute read felt like I was switching the lights on in a dark gym. Suddenly, every plateau that I hit, every overnight success story that I've heard, and every what am I doing wrong in the moment started making sense to me. So that's what I want to decode today, is diving deeper into those two curves to understand how we can understand our own growth patterns and leverage it as much to grow even more. So let's just dive right into it. The first curve, growth curve, is the logarithmic curve. This is when you achieve success straight off the bat and then you just plateau along the way. So picture this. You download Duolingo to learn Spanish. Your first week, you're tossing hola como estás around like a local, right? 2 weeks in, verb conjugations kick in and punch you right in the face. Your progress flattens, motivation nosedives. That's the logarithmic curve. Explosive early wins followed by an endless shelf where each extra 1% takes 10 times the effort going down. And you see this in the gym. If you're a new gym rat, you'll have gains straight away and you'll see that. But then let's say you get to month 3, 4, different story. Getting that same amount of gains requires even more effort, so you start to plateau. Then even in a new job, that happens. And another aspect where I found this to be true as well is meditation, especially the first month of meditation. When you start meditating, you get gains straight away in terms of your mental peace. But then as you get acclimatized to meditating, you have to change your routine up or shake it up in order to achieve the same level of peace that you initially did. So it's interesting. It's early dopamine, and then it's just a desert. And the danger is thinking that the desert means you chose the wrong path. That's not the case, when it actually means that the game just switched its difficulty levels. I hope it makes sense. Then you have the exponential curve, which is what a lot of us are familiar with. It's silent at the beginning, and then boom, it just takes off. It's the inverse of the logarithmic curve. So think about compound interest in your investment account, or the slow burn of publishing YouTube videos. If any of you do, you know the pain. For the first few months, the numbers look pretty flat, almost embarrassing. And then seemingly overnight, the line tilts skywards. That's exponential growth. Invisible at first, inevitable once the flywheel has actually gained momentum and taken off. And a great example of this is a friend of mine writes weekly newsletters. And for a year, his subscriber count was sub 200. And then month 13, one of his essays from the newsletter landed in a big creators roundup. And bang, it just jumped up to 3,000 in one weekend. It was the same writing, same cadence, but the curve just finally revealed itself. And exponential growth feels like nothing's happening right up until everyone starts calling you an overnight success. But then that begs the question of, why do we suffer so much? It's because we have this expectation mismatch. And it's essentially, think of when you're on a logarithmic curve, you achieve so much success and then you start plateauing out. You just think, okay, why does it not just keep going up? On the other side, if you're in the exponential growth curve, a lot of you think, why am I not achieving any success at the beginning? And then just when you're about to take off, you give up. Whereas you actually want that success to come up front. So there's a lot of expectation mismatch that occurs. Why does that happen though? It's because our brains are wired for linear progression. Efforts in equals results out in a linear pattern. But that when reality bends that line, we start panicking. And in the logarithmic curve, it's this fast start illusion that tricks us. We assume that the honeymoon pace will continue on forever. And in the exponential curve, it's the iceberg illusion that blinds us. We give up while the bulk of the progress is still hidden under the waterline. And if you scroll through Instagram, you'll see both illusions collide. your plateau language learning judged against somebody else's hockey stick follower chart. It's literally misery on demand. So we don't hate hard work, we hate when the graph in our own head doesn't match the one in real life. So how can we work with each curve? The first is figuring out which growth curve you are on your journey, depending on the project aspect of your life you're looking at. If you discover that you're on a logarithmic curve, treat it like a Formula One pit crew. Tiny discipline tweaks. 1% improvements in sleep, focus blocks, feedback loops, those kind of things. And Dave Brailsford, who is a Welsh cycling coach and also the coach of Team GB Cycling, calls it the aggregation of marginal gains theory that he's come up with, which is essentially shave a second here, a gram there, and watch the plateau start to slope again. And I'll actually have an episode dedicated to aggregation of marginal gains because I think it's such an important concept and that I want to dive deeper into as well, and it will be beneficial for you. So stay tuned for that. That should be coming out pretty soon as well. On the other hand, if you're on the exponential curve, the virtue isn't optimization. It's actually faith. Your sole job is to keep adding inputs while the output still looks flat. So publish the article nobody reads, record the video nobody watches, invest that $100 nobody notices, because when the curve tips and you started seeing those gains, that's when you need to protect the system and resist the itch to actually fix what's finally compounding. And I was thinking about this. One could argue that, yeah, sometimes the smartest way is to switch curves completely. If you've squeezed every drop out of a logarithmic curve, let's say, and it no longer excites you, move to a fresh arena where you're back on top in terms of a steep part. Growth loves novelty. And the fastest move isn't always grinding harder, it's just changing to a curve that still rewards the grind. So now what can we do initially from a growth standpoint to understand our own growth in a project that we're pursuing, in an aspect of life that we're trying to improve? Well, the first one is to spot what type of growth curve you're on, or that particular aspect or project is on. Spot the shape. If it's early fireworks that fades away, chances are that's a logarithmic curve right there. But if it's a long slog that feels pointless, that's the exponential curve potentially. The second thing is to sync emotions to maths. What I mean by that is logarithmic curves demands acceptance of the plateau and a microscope for 1% wins, whereas the exponential curve demands tolerance for boredom and a stopwatch for consistent reps. The third thing is you need to redefine progress. Plateau is not equal to failure. It's the invoice for earlier easy gains that you made. It's just perspective. And slow start doesn't equal stupid idea. It's compound interest accruing in stealth mode. So do this tonight. Take 5 minutes, right? Draw your current project's graph as honestly as you can and label which axis is lying to you, whether it's time, effort, or expectations. And see what happens. You'll gain a lot of clarity, I promise you that. At the same time, in everyday reflection, think about these things. Think about the things we recognize. So think about savings. The first $100 in a brand new account feels heroic, doesn't it? And then the next 100 barely moves the dial. That's the logarithmic curve screaming for marginal gains. Marginal gains such as automate deposits, cutting subscription costs, nudging the interest rate perhaps. Now flip to fitness trackers. You close those 3 Apple Watch rings for weeks, right? And the calories burnt graph refuses to budge until one morning your resting heart rate suddenly drops by 5 beats or so. All that invisible adaptation announces itself in a single number. That's exponential in biological form. And what is critical to understand is that we live both curves every single day. As I said, could be one project could be in logarithmic curve, the other one could be an exponential curve. The misery starts when we start pretending we are actually only on one, or that the shape shouldn't bend at all. It will, and it can. That's the reality of it. So progress isn't magic. It's mathematics wrapped in patience. learn the curve you're riding, adjust your expectations to its rhythm, and stay long enough for the numbers to vindicate your work. Because the path isn't lying to you, the graph on your mental whiteboard is.